It happens to all of us. I know at some point you've been told or heard that drugs are bad and to stay away from them. Typically, when you were a kid and you were growing up, you heard the adults telling you this, and within good reason. But one of the drugs, the main drug that is focused on these anti-drug propagandas is marijuana, when in reality marijuana should not be the drug that is focused on mainly, if it can even be considered a drug in the formal sense that these people are usually talking about. Marijuana is a plant that contains tetrahydrocannabinol, I'm sorry, that's a little hard to pronounce, or known as THC, and cannabidiol, which is known as CBD, and these are what cause the effects of what you feel when people ingest marijuana, or make you feel high, in the sense. And so far, right now, currently, 27 states have made medical marijuana use illegal, and in 46 states it is illegal to be used recreationally. So the chances are that you've known somebody that's been gotten in trouble from marijuana related crimes is very likely. And today I'm going to be giving you evidence to support my position that marijuana should be legal in all 50 states of the US, both medically and recreationally. And I'm going to do so by, first, I'm going to be talking about why it was made illegal in the first place, and then the economical benefits, and then the medical benefits. So first off, around the 1800s, marijuana use started to become... Sorry, I just needed to grab something. Marijuana use became very widely used and popular in America, and it was typically used in tinctures. And if you don't know what a tincture is, this is what a tincture would look like. This is not one, but essentially it's just a liquid with a rubber dropper, and you would just put it under your tongue. And it became so widely popular that it had to be labeled and as an over-the-counter drug. And it was still legal at the time, though. And then in 1910, the Mexican Revolution dialed down and kind of was over. So many Mexicans began to immigrate to the U.S. Except there was a problem. They also used marijuana, but they used it in a different way. They used it medically, just like the Americans did, but they also used it recreationally, which the Americans have never heard of because it was a concept that they couldn't really fathom because they didn't do that. And so the Mexicans had their own name for cannabis, which the Mexicans called it marijuana, which is where the name marijuana stems from Mexico. And especially in the southern states, the U.S. was getting worried about the growing population of Mexicans and immigrants. So then what they did, because they were afraid of this, they started creating false headlines saying things such as Mexican men are going crazy and killing people after smoking marijuana. And this was published widely in newspapers and made headlines, and the reason they did so was to put fear into people, and it worked because El Paso, Texas in 1915 was the first city to make marijuana illegal and started to deport people. And then this is how Mexicans started to become deported from marijuana use. So then the war on drugs happened, and this happened in 1970, but before that, let me take you back to 1956. So in 1956, the federal government began to implement mandatory sentences and imprisonment for drug-related crimes. And at this point, we're including other drugs, but marijuana is included for reference also. And then in 1970, when the war on drugs came, this was implemented by President Richard Nixon. What he did was he pretty much started cracking down on drug-related crimes and imprisoning more people, and just started a war on drugs, basically. And marijuana was labeled or scheduled an I-class drug, which means that it has no accepted medical use or no accepted medical use or I'm trying to remember the name. high potential for abuse or addiction. And then in 1980, Ronald Reagan built on these ideas and cracked down on the war on drugs even more heavy. And he really started imprisoning people, and he made the number of people in prison go from 150 per 100,000 people to the current 7,000 per 100,000 people. And this is for drug-related crimes. So you can see at its core, the illegalization began with racial motivations. So now that I've discussed why it was legal in the first place, I'm going to discuss the economical benefits. Washington State was the first state to legalize recreational marijuana use, and since 2014 when they did, they have made $1 billion in revenue, and they were actually able to get $250 million in excise taxes, so which can really help the state. And then the second state to legalize this was Colorado, and they legalized recreational marijuana in 2014 as well, and in their first year alone they made $700 million, and by 2016 they were expected to be at $1 billion, but now 2018 it hasn't slowed down and the number is way past that in what they make, which is funny if you think about it. Right now, there's a couple more states that are beginning to implement that, and their interest is being piqued because Colorado, at one point, they've had a surplus of money that they don't know what to do with. So this is what piques the interest of other states, and you can see why. It's the money. It's good revenue. So therefore, it helps the economy. And as of right now, Oregon and Alaska have also implemented legalizing recreational marijuana. So we might see some more changes in the near future. Another economical benefit is what's known as hemp. Hemp is a variation of the cannabis plant, and it can be used to make many materials, such as like raw building materials, paper, woods, any building material, clothing, health supplements, things like that. Like so many materials and resources. But sadly, right now it's also illegal. So right now the U.S. is importing hemp from other countries, which is different if it were legal here in the U.S. And you can see, because there's from one country to another, shipping and trading and dealing with countries, importing, there's a lot of rules and regulations, and it would be different than having it here. And as a plant can grow faster than trees, so many resources such as paper and wood would be able to be replenished fast, and we wouldn't have to cut down so many forests the way we do, because we can just make more plants, and they don't take as long, they don't take years to grow like trees do. So now that I've talked about the economical benefits of marijuana, I want to talk about the medical benefits of this. And if you ask me what they are, there's many. A broad list is it can be used to treat pain, nausea, vomiting, sleeping issues, anxieties, epilepsy, autism, and this is just a broad list because the list is very it goes into a lot of specifics and is very vast. It's almost too vast to cover in a sense, because there's just so many possibilities that it can do, and it really does have so many benefits that it would render the pharmaceutical pills that a lot of people use essentially useless, because we wouldn't have to use as many pharmaceutical drugs because they can all be replaced by the use of cannabis. So then another thing that I think is really important is that for those people that are using it medically, there are many ways and forms to ingest the marijuana. So if you don't want to smoke it because you don't like that or anything like that, there are many forms, and some of these don't even give you the high or affect you in the way that it would. They just give you the health benefits. And these forms are all vaping, smoking, incorporating it into foods, oils, ointments, tinctures, body creams, and there's a couple more out there, but there's a couple. So for those people that don't like to smoke, you can get the pure benefit of THC from some of these, which is good. So right now there's actually promise in the research that marijuana can lead to the battle against cancer. In some studies it has been shown that marijuana can the THC, it stops or inhibits the growth of tumors and malignant tumors. In one study done in rats, the malignant tumors in the rats were completely eliminated by the THC. They were eliminated, and it increased the lifespan, or how long the rats lived in some of the other ones. But as of right now, there hasn't been much research done on really what it can do, what the marijuana can do because of these strict laws on it. There hasn't been much opportunity for research. But as you can see, there's a lot of promise, especially with cancer, one of the biggest issues in the medical community. There's a lot of promise to what it can do and can help. So today I explain why I believe it should be legal, both recreationally and medically. And I've done so by telling you, the history of why it was made illegal in the first place. So hopefully you can see that maybe it shouldn't have been. And the economical benefits, positive ones of course, that it would have on the country. And the medical benefits which can be used to aid many, many people in this world. And thank you for listening.